solutions of salts. The aim of the experiment is to observe the action of zinc, iron, copper and aluminium metal on aqueous solutions of the salts zinc sulfate, ferrous sulfate, copper sulfate and aluminium sulfate. Based on the results obtained, arrange the metals in the decreasing order of their reactivity. The apparatus required are test tubes with test tube stand, a 10 milliliter pipette with a rubber bulb and sandpaper. Chemicals required are thin metal strips of zinc, iron, copper and aluminium and aqueous solutions of zinc sulfate, ferrous sulfate, copper sulfate and aluminium sulfate and distilled water. Let us begin with the experiment. First, let us clean the metal strips with sandpaper. Now, take 10 milliliters of the solutions of zinc sulfate, ferrous sulfate, copper sulfate, and aluminium sulfate in separate test tubes. Add strips of aluminium to each test tube. Let us first observe the test tube containing zinc sulfate. The solution of zinc sulfate remains colorless. The strip of aluminium gets a shiny coat of zinc. This shows that zinc is displaced by aluminium. The next solution is ferrous sulfate solution. The solution of ferrous sulfate fades in color, and the strip of aluminium gets a shiny coat of iron. This shows that iron is displaced by aluminium. When the aluminium strip is dipped in the solution of copper sulfate, the solution of copper sulfate fades in color and the strip of aluminium gets a reddish coat of copper. Copper is displaced by aluminium. When the aluminium strip is dipped in aluminium sulfate, there is no reaction seen. Now let us dip the zinc strips in the solution of zinc sulfate, ferrous sulfate, copper sulfate and aluminium sulfate. What do you observe? There is no reaction seen when the zinc strip is dipped in the zinc sulfate solution. When the zinc strip is dipped in the ferrous sulfate solution, a shiny coat of iron is formed on the zinc strip and the color of ferrous sulfate fades. Iron is displaced by zinc. When the zinc strip is dipped in the copper sulfate solution, a reddish coat of copper is formed in the metal strip and the color of copper sulfate solution also fades. Copper is displaced by zinc. There is no reaction seen when the zinc strip is dipped in a solution of aluminium sulfate. Now let us dip the iron strips in all the 4 solutions and observe. There is a reaction seen only in the test tube containing copper sulfate. The iron strip gets a reddish coat of copper and the color of copper sulfate solution also fades. This happens because copper is displaced by iron. In all the other test tubes, there is no reaction seen. Now, let us dip the copper strips in all the 4 solutions. What do you observe? There is no reaction seen in any of the test tubes. Inference. On the basis of the observations, we can arrange the metals in the decreasing order of their reactivity. Aluminium is more reactive than zinc. zinc is more reactive than iron, while iron is more reactive than copper.